Hi, I'm going to go through creating some cubes like these, doing some metal rendering on them. So to begin with, I start by establishing a horizon line and then putting a center line for the cubes, so one on the left and one on the right, and then projecting from the top of those lines down towards the horizon line. And I'm not going all the way, but I'll show you. And just at this bit here, doing some measurements using the pencil, where I use the tip of the pencil to map out or mask the length of one edge and then project that to the next angle. So the cube, I want to have every line at the same dimensions. So for all of the lines that I'm making making them match those same dimensions. So if you don't need to use a ruler, you just use your pencil to quickly assist with creating lines that are all the same proportion, and then hopefully you're making everything all lining up with the lines going at the same angles, which is the next most important thing to focus on. So I'll just erase out a few of the construction lines that I don't want visible when I'm working on the rendering. The goal is just to have a clean outline of the cubes so that we can then get into I'm going to explore using graphite and charcoal to create some metal textures on these basic cubes. And I'll just go back in with a 2B pencil now and establish the outlines and clean up the lines of it, trying to do the strokes all in one fluid motion. So the construction lines, you don't have to worry about being too precious with those and making them cleanly. Just do them really lightly so that you can then erase them. I find that erasing with the kneadable eraser, like now, works best because it's not totally removing the line. It only removes it partially so that I can still see it. It's not super clear in the video, but I can see it pretty easily so that I can now go back in and make the final lines for the outlines with the 2B pencil, and not do them too heavily, but do them cleanly and accurately so that they're all of equal quality and being made in, again, I go over it a couple of times, but I'm making them all in one stroke so that they're not wonky or they haven't got that sort of feathered edge to them that you'll get if you don't go from one point all the way to the other. So if you go from one edge to another, you should get a much nicer line. And top left, I'm inserting a light source and projecting out from the corners of each cube. I'm making a surface, or I'm masking out a plane that I'm imagining is the side of that cube and it being flattened. And I'm just using the pencil to show the angle. And I want to project that angle of the base of the cube out away from it so that it's matching it. And then doing the same on the just above where I put that rectangle. I'm doing the same there where it's following the same angle of the top of the cube. So that's the way to find where your cast shadow is going to be falling on a flat surface, is to essentially flatten the object that is casting that shadow. And for this cube, all these lines should be matching one another. And down the bottom there, I'm just doing a quick texture outlay. So I'm doing a little exploration of the metal surface if I'm just looking directly at that flat surface. So I've sped up the footage of rendering the surfaces now, and I'm using a technique of cross-hatching with the pencil and using the flat edge of it. So the plane on the right will have the most amount of shading, and the one on the left will have a little bit less, and the one at the top will have the least, since that's facing the light source. And I've rounded the edges of the cube a little bit, as I'm imagining that the metal cube has these rounded planes instead of being hard edges on this one on the left. So the most important part is showing the difference in the quality, in the amount that you're rendering each surface. So each plane, because it's facing a different direction, is going to have a different amount of graphite on it. So on this one, on this right cube, I'll explore using charcoal. So I'm using a willow stick I'm just using willow charcoal and then going into it with a Progresso pencil. So that's just graphite. But the car shadow, I'm just filling in with that willow charcoal, as I want it to be a little bit darker. And then defining the edge out with a compressed charcoal. So the one on the right, I want it to look really like it has a high level of contrast, because the metal is a lot more reflective than the one on the left. The left, I'm imagining, is like a chrome-like texture that's a little bit more absorbent of light, whereas the one on the right, I want it to be really, really reflective and to have lots of dark and lots of light areas in it. So everything on the right of this light source, I'm making very dark, and then I'm putting even texture on this left face of the cube. And that little shape that I just put on to that left face of the right hand cube is the reflected, that cube reflecting some of the shadow that's showing on the cube on the left. So it's actually, because that surface is so reflective, you're able to, almost like a mirror, but because the mirror is on an angle, you can see the cube. And yeah, just polishing up a little bit, working back into it with that kneadable eraser. And there I've just jumped forward a little bit. I had used the compressed charcoal to fill in the background, as I wanted to make the cubes stand out a little bit more. I wanted them to pop from the background. And because I did that, I can now see where some of the areas of the cubes are needing to be built up a little bit more. So it needed to build up the car shadow and to increase the overall quality of the surface rendering of the cube. So going back into them with a smudge tool, so it's just a paper stump, and using the kneadable eraser to cut back into some of those surfaces and show how reflective they are. So it's looking at reference photos, but these ones I did from imagination. But from looking at reference photos of metallic surfaces, you can see that they're very, very reflective and have a high level of contrast. So we need to have that complete white of the paper, but also almost 100% black of the compressed charcoal. And going back in and working them both up to the same level of finish, so that there's one isn't more complete than the other, and cleaning up edges using both a hard eraser and a soft edge eraser in that kneadable eraser, and putting in a little bit more with that willow charcoal. Anyway, I hope this was helpful and entertaining. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.